The worst lies don't arrive screaming. They arrive wearing exhaustion and asking for sympathy. The rain hammered against the kitchen windows hard enough to rattle the glass when Olivia finally came home. 11:43 p.m. I remember the exact time because I'd been staring at the microwave clock for almost an hour, waiting for her headlights to swing into the driveway. Seattle rain has a sound to it, different from anywhere else I've lived. Colder somehow. Thinner. Like static whispering against the roof. When the front door opened, a gust of wet air rolled through the house with her. Olivia stepped inside slowly, one hand against the wall like she needed help standing upright. Her blonde hair clung damp against her cheeks. Mascara faintly smudged beneath tired eyes. She looked pale. Too pale. "Hey," she whispered weakly. "I think I caught some kind of stomach bug." Normally, hearing that would have triggered the old version of me immediately. The husband moaned. Grab ginger ale. Warm up soup. Ask if she needed Tylenol. 14 years of marriage wires your brain like that. You stop thinking about yourself first. But something about her felt wrong before she even finished the sentence. Not sick. Careful. There's a difference. I walked toward her slowly, taking the wet coat from her shoulders. The fabric was cold from the rain, heavier than usual. And underneath the smell of damp wool and perfume, there was something else. A sharp chemical scent. Sterile. Clinical. Like disinfectant from a doctor's office. Olivia avoided my eyes as she slipped off her heels near the door. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah," she answered too quickly. "Just food poisoning or something. I'm exhausted." Her voice sounded thin, stretched tight like paper about to tear. She headed toward the stairs, one hand wrapped around her stomach. Then she stumbled slightly. Just enough to make me move instinctively toward her. "Whoa. Easy." I reached for her arm. That's when I saw it. A thin plastic hospital bracelet hidden halfway beneath the sleeve of her sweater. White band. Black lettering. The kind they snap around your wrist in ER check-ins and urgent care clinics. Olivia saw my eyes land on it and immediately tugged her sleeve down. Too late. "What's that?" I asked quietly. "Nothing," she said fast. Too fast. "They gave me fluids earlier. I stopped at urgent care." She kept moving upstairs while talking, not waiting for questions, not slowing down long enough for the conversation to settle anywhere real. Another thing that didn't feel like Olivia. My wife used to over-explain everything. Stories. Details. Tangents. But guilty people become minimalists. I stood there in the foyer listening to her footsteps disappear down the hallway above me while rainwater dripped from her coat onto the hardwood floor. The house suddenly felt colder than it had 10 minutes earlier. I bent down to pick up her purse where she dropped it near the stairs. Lipstick. Wallet. Crumpled receipts. And one folded piece of paper shoved halfway into the side pocket. White paper with blue lettering across the top. Prescription information. The page had been ripped in half like someone tried to destroy it quickly. My pulse slowed instead of speeding up. Funny thing about betrayal. Your body doesn't always react with panic first. Sometimes it reacts with clarity. I unfolded the torn paper carefully. Most of the information was missing, but one sentence remained visible near the bottom. Patient advised to notify recent partners immediately. I stared at those words while thunder rolled somewhere beyond the neighborhood. Upstairs, I heard the shower turn on. Water rushing through pipes inside walls I'd paid for. Inside the home I thought was safe. I looked back down at the paper in my hand. Then at the rain sliding down the windows. And for the first time in my marriage, I had the terrible feeling that my wife hadn't come home sick. She'd come home scared. I did not sleep that night. I lay beside Olivia listening to the soft rhythm of rain tapping against the bedroom windows while she breathed steadily beside me like nothing in the world had changed. But once doubt enters a marriage, it changes the sound of everything. The mattress feels larger. The silence feels heavier. Even breathing starts to sound rehearsed. Around 2 in the morning, Olivia shifted under the blankets and turned away from me, pulling the comforter tighter around her shoulders. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning slow shadows across the room and kept thinking about that sentence on the torn prescription paper. Notify recent partners immediately. The words sat in my chest like ice water. I told myself there could be explanations. Medical language always sounds worse than reality. Maybe it was routine. Maybe urgent care paperwork used generic wording. Maybe I was letting exhaustion and paranoia build a story that did not exist. But deep down, another part of me already knew something important. Innocent people usually try to explain. Guilty people try to escape the conversation. And Olivia had practically sprinted upstairs. At 2:17 a.m., her phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. Just once. A short vibration against wood. Olivia did not wake up, but I did. My eyes moved toward the screen automatically. The display lit the darkness faint blue for maybe 3 seconds before fading again. Long enough for me to see one thing. Ethan. No last name. Just Ethan. My stomach tightened slowly. Not explosive anger. Not rage. Something colder. Something quieter. I kept staring at the dark screen after the light disappeared. Ethan. I searched my memory like a man digging through old boxes in an attic. Then I found it. 3 months earlier at a charity fundraiser downtown. Olivia standing near the bar laughing with a tall guy in a navy suit, while a jazz band played in the background. That is Dr. Ethan Cole. She had told me casually afterward in the car. His practice works with Seattle Grace. At the time, the name meant nothing. Now it sounded like a smoke alarm in my head. Beside me, Olivia shifted again. You coming to bed? She mumbled half asleep, not realizing I was already there. Yeah, I answered quietly. Funny thing about lies. Once you detect one, your brain starts replaying every memory differently. Suddenly the last 8 months of our marriage began rearranging themselves inside my head like pieces of evidence sliding across a detective board. The work conferences that multiplied out of nowhere. The gym membership she suddenly cared about after years of ignoring. Fitness. The phone turning face down during dinner. The way she started locking the bathroom door while showering. The distance during conversations. The exhaustion. The constant exhaustion. Looking back, the signs were not hidden. I had hidden them from myself. Because when you love someone long enough, you learn how to protect the version of them that makes you feel safe. Around 4 in the morning, I finally got out of bed and walked downstairs. The hardwood floors felt cold beneath my feet. Seattle rain blurred the backyard lights into pale streaks beyond the kitchen windows. I poured myself a glass of water and stood there in the dim light staring at Olivia's coat hanging over the chair. The prescription paper still sat folded in my pocket like a loaded weapon I had not decided to fire. Then I noticed something else. Her purse. Still sitting near the staircase where she dropped it. Half unzipped. I should have left it alone. Good husbands trust their wives. That is what people say. But trust is easy before evidence arrives. I walked over slowly and opened the purse wider. Inside were the usual things. Makeup. Wallet. Gum. Receipts. Then my hand brushed against the small orange pharmacy bottle buried near the bottom. No label. Torn off completely. My pulse slowed again. Calm. Too calm. Like my body had already accepted what my heart was still trying to negotiate. Upstairs, water pipes groaned softly inside the walls while Olivia slept. Safe. Warm. Protected by a house built from my overtime hours and weekend contracts. And standing there in that dark kitchen holding an unlabeled prescription bottle, I realized something that scared me more than the affair itself. My wife was not just hiding a mistake. She was hiding consequences. By morning, the rain had faded into that gray Seattle drizzle that makes the whole city feel half awake. Olivia was already downstairs when I walked into the kitchen. Fresh sweater. Hair brushed. Coffee brewing. If I had not seen the hospital bracelet myself, I might have believed the performance. You feeling better? I asked carefully. She nodded without looking at me. A little. Her voice sounded smoother now. Controlled. Rehearsed. She stood at the counter scrolling through her phone while pretending to sip tea. I noticed something strange immediately. Olivia always left her phone face up around me for years. Now it stayed angled away like it carried state secrets. Funny how betrayal changes body language before it changes words. I grabbed my travel mug slowly, watching her from across the kitchen island. Urgent care gave you antibiotics? I asked casually. Her hand froze for maybe half a second before moving again. Tiny pause. Tiny crack. Yeah, she answered. Just precautionary. Precautionary. That word echoed in my head all morning. I left for work around 7, but my mind never made it to the office. The HVAC warehouse smelled like sawdust, copper wiring, and machine oil, same as it had for the last 11 years. Usually work grounded me. Measurements. Schedules. Numbers. Things that made sense. But that morning, every invoice blurred together. Every conversation sounded distant. Around 10:30, my phone rang while I was reviewing permits in my office. Unknown number. Seattle area code. I almost ignored it. Almost. Daniel Brooks. I answered. Silence for a second. Then a woman's voice. Calm. Controlled. Older than Olivia. Mr. Brooks? She asked softly. Yes. Another pause. I heard traffic somewhere behind her. Rain hitting pavement. My name is Victoria Cole, she said. I think our spouses know each other. The room went completely still around me. Forklift sounds faded. Phones disappeared. My heartbeat slowed so suddenly it scared me. Victoria continued before I could answer. I know this is an awful call to receive, she said quietly. But I would want someone to tell me. I leaned back slowly in my chair, gripping the edge of the desk hard enough to feel the wood press into my palm. How do you know my wife? I asked. Because my husband has been lying to me for almost a year. No anger in her voice. That was the part that unsettled me most. She sounded exhausted. Like someone who had already cried all the tears and reached the colder side of grief. Dr. Ethan Cole, she continued. Cardiology specialist at Seattle Grace. The same name from Olivia's phone. The same name from the fundraiser. The same name now pulling every loose thread tight around my throat. I stared through my office window at gray rain sliding down the parking lot while Victoria spoke carefully, like someone handling broken glass. Last night Ethan told me he was covering an overnight consult, she said. But this morning I found paperwork in his car. I swallowed hard. What kind of paperwork? Silence again. Then one sentence that made my stomach drop. Medical screening results. The air conditioning hummed softly above me while my entire marriage seemed to tilt sideways. Victoria inhaled shakily before continuing. Your wife's name was attached to the billing information. I closed my eyes for 1 second. Just one. Long enough to feel 14 years rearranging themselves into something uglier. I am not calling to create drama, she said. I am calling because whatever they were exposed to apparently involved both households now. Exposed. Such a clinical word. Clean. Cold. Like doctors discussing contamination instead of marriage. I rubbed my jaw slowly and looked down at the unlabeled prescription bottle sitting inside my desk drawer where I had hidden it before leaving home. Suddenly every piece fit together too perfectly. Olivia's panic. The urgent care visit. The ripped paperwork. The late night arrival. The fear in her eyes that had nothing to do with illness. Victoria spoke again, quieter this time. I think we should meet. Outside my office window, rainwater slid down the glass in crooked silver lines while Seattle traffic crawled through another gray morning. And sitting there with my phone pressed against my ear, I realized something painful about betrayal. Sometimes the affair is not even the worst part. Sometimes the worst part is discovering your spouse risked your health while still kissing you goodbye every morning like love and deception could survive in the same house. I met Victoria Cole at a coffee shop downtown near Pike Place just after 6 that evening. Seattle looked like it always does in November. Wet sidewalks. Gray sky hanging low over the buildings. Steam rising from sewer grates while headlights blurred through. Mist like ghosts moving through the city. I parked across the street and sat in my truck for a full minute before going inside. Funny thing about betrayal. Even when you already know the truth, part of you still hopes the next conversation will somehow erase it. The bell above the cafe door chimed softly when I walked in. Warm air hit me first. Coffee beans. Cinnamon. Wet coats drying near the entrance. People talking quietly over laptops like the world had not just split open inside my chest. Victoria sat alone near the back window with both hands wrapped around a paper cup. Blonde hair pulled back neatly. Dark green coat folded beside her chair. Early 40s maybe. Elegant in the exhausted way people become after too many sleepless nights. She looked up when I approached, and for one awkward second we just stared at each other. Two strangers connected by the same lie. "Daniel?" she asked quietly. I nodded. "Victoria." We shook hands gently like people meeting at a funeral. Because in a way, we were. I sat across from her while rain tapped softly against the windows behind us. Neither of us spoke right away. The espresso machine hissed somewhere behind the counter, loud enough to fill the silence neither of us wanted to touch first. Then Victoria reached down slowly and placed a manila folder on the table between us. My stomach tightened immediately. "I did not know if you would come," she admitted softly. "I almost did not," I answered. She nodded like she understood completely. "I kept telling myself I was wrong too," she said. "For months." Her voice cracked slightly on the last word before she steadied it again. Controlled pain. The kind adults carry quietly because bills still need paying and meetings still happen at 9 in the morning. Victoria slid the folder toward me carefully. "I found these in Ethan's car this morning." I stared at the folder without opening it. Somehow paper had become terrifying. Finally, I lifted the flap slowly. Inside were medical billing statements, lab forms, insurance summaries, clinical language arranged neatly across pages that smelled faintly like printer ink and hospital disinfectant. Olivia Brooks. Ethan Cole. My eyes stopped on the dates first. Nearly 8 months back. Appointment after appointment hidden beneath conference weekends and late work dinners. My pulse slowed into something dangerously calm. Then I saw the phrase highlighted near the middle of one report. Partner exposure screening recommended. Another line underneath. Follow-up treatment advised for all recent contacts. The cafe suddenly felt too warm. Too loud. I leaned back slowly while voices and dishes clattered somewhere around us like life continuing for everyone except me. "I do not understand how people do this," Victoria whispered while staring down into her untouched coffee. "How they come home afterward and sit at the dinner table like nothing happened." I looked back at the paperwork in silence. One page showed Olivia's urgent care check-in from the night before. The same hospital bracelet. The same timeline. The same lie she carried into our house while pretending she just had food poisoning. "When did you know?" I asked quietly. Victoria gave a tired laugh without humor. "Women know before they admit it," she said. "You notice little things first. New passwords. Longer gym sessions. Smiling at texts they angle away from you." Every sentence felt like someone reading my own marriage back to me. She rubbed her hands together slowly like she was cold. "Ethan kept saying I was paranoid," she continued. "That I was stressed. Emotional. But this morning I found a receipt from the clinic in his coat pocket." She paused. "Then I found your wife's name attached to the insurance claim." Outside, rain streaked down the windows in crooked silver lines while pedestrians hurried beneath umbrellas through the Seattle evening. I looked down again at the medical paperwork spread across the table between us like evidence in a courtroom neither of us wanted to enter. And sitting there across from another betrayed spouse in the middle of a crowded coffee shop, I realized something ugly about affairs. They are never just secrets. Eventually they become paperwork. Timelines. Prescriptions. Consequences. After Victoria left, I stayed in that coffee shop nearly 40 minutes staring at paperwork that no longer looked real. Around me, people laughed over pastries and checked emails and argued softly about parking downtown, while my marriage collapsed between cold coffee cups and medical terminology. Funny how ordinary the world stays when your life stops making sense. By the time I walked back outside, the rain had slowed into a fine mist drifting through the streetlights. Seattle looked washed out. Silver sidewalks. Fog hanging low near the waterfront. I sat inside my truck with the heater running and the folder resting on the passenger seat beside me like something radioactive. Then, without meaning to, I started thinking about Olivia before all this. Before passwords. Before lies. Before doctors and paperwork and strangers saying my wife's name in quiet cafes. 14 years is a long time to hand someone pieces of yourself. I met Olivia when we were both 27. She was working marketing for a construction supplier in Bellevue back when my HVAC company was still just me and a borrowed van with fading paint on the side doors. I still remember her laughing at how nervous I sounded ordering coffee on our first date. She had this way of making ordinary places feel warmer. Diners. Grocery stores. Sunday mornings. Back then, love felt simple. We built our life slowly the way working people do. One paycheck at a time. One sacrifice at a time. I spent years crawling through attics in July heat installing ductwork, while she worked corporate jobs downtown wearing heels and carrying laptops that cost more than my first truck. But we were a team then. At least I thought we were. I remember the first house we bought together. Tiny backyard. Cracked driveway. Leaky gutters every winter. Olivia painted the kitchen cabinets herself while old rock music played through a Bluetooth speaker balanced on the counter. We ate takeout sitting on the floor because we could not afford furniture yet. She used to fall asleep against my chest during thunderstorms while Seattle rain rattled the windows exactly like it did now. Somewhere along the way, success entered the marriage quietly. My company grew from one van into 12 service trucks across King County. We hired crews. Opened a warehouse. Started landing commercial contracts instead of just residential calls. The money improved. The stress improved too. Success changes schedules before it changes people. I worked longer hours. Olivia traveled more for conferences and networking events. Dinners became rushed conversations over reheated leftovers. Then eventually even the conversations disappeared. Looking back now, I can pinpoint the exact season things shifted. About a year ago, Olivia stopped touching me casually. No hand on my shoulder passing through the kitchen. No absent-minded kisses while brushing past me in hallways. Little things vanish first in dying marriages. Nobody notices because the mortgage still gets paid and holiday cards still go out on time. I kept telling myself adulthood was just exhausting us. That is what men like me do. We rationalize pain into responsibility. Around midnight I finally drove home. The neighborhood sat quiet beneath wet streetlights while rainwater shimmered across empty driveways. Inside the house, only the lamp above the stove remained on. Olivia had gone upstairs already. I stood alone in the kitchen loosening my tie slowly while memories kept replaying against the silence like old film reels. Her laughing barefoot in our first apartment. Her crying the day my business account finally hit 6 figures because she said she was proud of me. Her wrapping Christmas lights around the porch while snow fell 3 winters ago. It is strange how betrayal works. Your mind does not immediately hold on to the worst moments. It clings to the best ones first. Because part of you keeps searching for proof the person you loved was real at some point. I looked upstairs toward the bedroom where Olivia slept and suddenly realized something painful. Affairs do not begin in hotel rooms or secret text messages. They begin long before that. In distance. In silence. In the slow moment one person stops protecting the marriage while the other person still believes they are building a future together. The next 3 days passed like living inside fog. Olivia moved through the house pretending normal still existed while I watched every detail with the kind of calm that only comes after trust dies. She made coffee in the mornings, folded laundry at night, asked me if I wanted takeout on Thursday like she had not detonated 14 years of marriage behind my back. That was the strangest part. Betrayal rarely looks dramatic up close. Most of the time it looks painfully ordinary. Friday afternoon, Victoria called again while I was sitting alone in my office finishing payroll reports. Her voice sounded tighter this time. Less shock. More certainty. I found more, she said quietly. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the rain sliding down the warehouse windows. What kind of more? Silence. Papers shifting softly on her end of the line. There was another clinic visit 6 weeks ago, she said carefully. Different department. Something cold moved through my chest. What department? Another pause. Then she answered in almost a whisper. Women's health. I closed my eyes slowly. The office suddenly felt smaller. The fluorescent lights overhead buzzed softly while my mind started assembling pieces I never wanted connected. Olivia disappearing for an entire Saturday in September claiming she was at a marketing retreat. Coming home exhausted afterward. Sleeping almost 12 hours straight. Saying she had food poisoning back then too. Victoria exhaled shakily into the phone. Daniel, she said softly. I think there may have been a pregnancy scare. The sentence landed quietly. No explosion. No shouting. Just a deep hollow sensation spreading through my ribs. I stared at the family photo sitting on my desk. Olivia smiling beside me last Christmas beneath white lights and fake snow decorations downtown. Looking at it now felt like staring at strangers pretending to be us. Did Ethan tell you any of this? I asked. Victoria laughed bitterly under her breath. Ethan tells me I am paranoid. Her voice hardened slightly for the first time since we met. But paranoid people do not accidentally find appointment confirmations and treatment invoices hidden in gym bags. Treatment invoices. God. Affairs always sound glamorous in movies. Secret romance. Passion. Escape. Reality looks uglier. Clinics. Lies. Prescriptions. Consequences mailed to your house in sealed envelopes. There is something else, Victoria continued quietly. I checked our phone records. I rubbed my jaw slowly. How bad? Hundreds of calls. Her voice cracked this time before recovering. Mostly during work hours. Late nights too. Weekends when Ethan claimed he was on hospital consults. I looked toward the office door, making sure nobody could hear me. My employees still thought I was just handling inventory schedules and contractor bids while my marriage rotted in real time. How long? I asked quietly. At least 10 months. 10 months. Nearly a year of shared holidays. Shared dinners. Shared bedsheets. 10 months of Olivia kissing me goodbye while carrying another life inside her head. Victoria inhaled slowly. I do not think they planned for any of this to surface, she admitted. The medical issue forced them into panic mode. Panic mode? That explained Olivia perfectly now. The shaking hands. The rushed lies. The fear behind her eyes when I noticed the hospital bracelet. She had not come home guilty because of the affair alone. She came home terrified the consequences had finally followed her through the front door. After the call ended, I stayed motionless at my desk for a long time listening to warehouse sounds echo faintly through the building. Nail guns. Forklifts. Men laughing somewhere near the loading bay. Ordinary life continuing while mine collapsed beneath paperwork and secrets. Then my office door opened suddenly. One of my project managers stepped halfway inside holding blueprints. Hey boss, you good? He asked carefully. I realized then my hands were clenched so tightly my knuckles looked pale beneath the fluorescent lights. But my voice stayed calm when I answered. Yeah, I said quietly. Just dealing with some personal stuff. He nodded and left without asking more questions. That is adulthood sometimes. Men bleeding internally while discussing roofing permits 5 minutes later. Around 7 that night I pulled into my driveway and saw Olivia through the kitchen window stirring soup on the stove like we were still a normal married couple. Warm yellow light spilled across the counters behind her. For one dangerous second, the house almost looked safe again. Then I remembered the medical reports. The hidden appointments. The lies stacked month after month beneath our life together like rot under floorboards. And standing there in the rain outside my own home, I realized something brutal. Affairs survive on fantasy until reality finally arrives carrying lab results and billing statements. Saturday arrived wrapped in cold rain and low gray clouds hanging over Seattle like wet concrete. Olivia spent most of the morning pretending life was normal. She cleaned the kitchen, folded towels, asked if I wanted pancakes while soft music played through the house. Watching her move around the kitchen felt surreal now. Like watching an actress perform inside a set built from my memories. Every smile looked calculated. Every casual touch felt rehearsed. Around noon she walked into my office while I was reviewing invoices at home. "You have been quiet lately," she said carefully. I looked up from my laptop slowly. "Busy week." She studied my face for a second too long. I could almost see the fear working behind her eyes now. Not guilt anymore. Fear. People can survive guilt if they think the truth stays buried. Fear begins when they suspect the ground is shifting beneath them. "I was thinking maybe we should have people over tonight," she said suddenly. "Just something small. Normal. Normal. God." The word almost made me laugh. Instead, I nodded once. "Sure." Relief flickered across her face too quickly before she hit it again. "Maybe Ethan and Victoria too," she added casually while pretending to wipe the counter. There it was. Not an accident. A test. Olivia wanted to see if Ethan still looked safe standing in the same room with me. I kept my expression neutral. "Sounds good." By 6:30 the house smelled like rosemary chicken and expensive candles Olivia always lit when guests came over. Outside, rain streaked down the windows while warm yellow light filled the dining room. Ethan arrived first carrying a bottle of wine and wearing the same polished confidence men like him spend years practicing. Tall. Calm. Navy coat still damp from the weather. He shook my hand firmly. Like he had not spent nearly a year helping destroy my marriage. "Daniel," he said smoothly. "Good to see you, man." Funny thing about betrayal. Sometimes the people hurting you smile directly into your face while asking about your week. Olivia floated around the kitchen refilling glasses too quickly, laughing slightly too hard at harmless comments. Ethan looked tense beneath the charm, though. Tiny tells gave him away. His jaw tightened every time Olivia touched her phone. His eyes kept drifting toward the front door. Waiting. At exactly 7:12, the doorbell rang. The entire room changed instantly. Ethan froze halfway through lifting his wine glass. Olivia stopped moving completely. I stood slowly from the table. "I will get it," I said calmly. Victoria stood on the porch wearing a dark wool coat with rainwater glistening across the shoulders. In her hand sat the same manila folder from the coffee shop. She looked exhausted but steady. Like someone who finally reached the point where truth mattered more than comfort. "You ready?" she asked quietly. I nodded once and stepped aside. The dining room went silent when Victoria entered. Olivia's face lost color immediately. Ethan stood halfway from his chair. "Victoria," he said sharply. "What are you doing here?" She ignored him completely. Calmness can be terrifying when everyone else expects emotion. Victoria removed her coat carefully and walked to the dining table carrying the folder against her chest. Olivia tried first. "This is not a good time," she said quickly. Her voice sounded thin now. Fragile. Victoria finally looked at her directly. "No," she answered softly. "Actually, this is the perfect time." Nobody moved. Rain tapped against the windows while silverware and untouched wine glasses sat frozen across the table like props in a crime scene. Victoria opened the folder slowly. Paper sliding against paper suddenly sounded louder than thunder. Ethan's face tightened hard enough to drain color from his cheeks. Olivia whispered my name quietly. "Daniel!" but I just sat there watching her the same way surgeons probably watch monitors during critical moments. Calm. Detached. Waiting for truth to finish speaking. Victoria pulled out the first medical report and read directly from the page. Patient advised to notify all recent partners following exposure risk. Her voice never rose. That made it worse somehow. Olivia's wine glass slipped slightly in her hand. Ethan stood abruptly. Enough, he snapped. Victoria ignored him again and lifted another page. Insurance claims submitted under Olivia Brooks and Ethan Cole. Silence swallowed the room whole after that. Real silence. The kind where people suddenly hear their own breathing. Olivia stared at the table like she could disappear into the hardwood. Ethan looked trapped inside his own skin. And sitting there beneath warm dining room lights while rain washed against the windows outside, I realized humiliation rarely arrives through screaming. Sometimes it arrives quietly. Printed in black ink across medical paperwork nobody thought another spouse would ever read. Nobody spoke for several seconds after Victoria finished reading the paperwork. The dining room sat frozen beneath warm chandelier light, while rain whispered against the windows behind us. Olivia stared downward at the tablecloth like eye contact itself had become dangerous. Ethan looked ready to bolt through the front door. Victoria simply stood there holding the folder with both hands, exhausted but steady. It amazed me how quiet disaster could sound. No screaming. No plates thrown across the room. Just 4 adults breathing inside the wreckage of their own choices. Ethan finally moved first. Victoria, this is not what you think, he said sharply, stepping toward her. She looked at him with the kind of calm disappointment that only comes after trust dies slowly. Then explain the billing records, she answered softly. Explain the treatment invoices. Ethan opened his mouth, closed it again, then looked toward Olivia like maybe she could rescue him. She could not even rescue herself. Olivia finally lifted her eyes toward me. They looked glassy now. Fragile. Daniel, she whispered. Please say something. Funny thing about betrayal. People stay silent while they are lying for months, then suddenly beg for conversation the second truth enters the room. I leaned back in my chair slowly and folded my hands together. My voice came out calm enough to surprise even me. How long? Olivia's face collapsed immediately. Tears gathered fast beneath her mascara. It was not supposed to happen like this, she said shakily. Not an answer. Just panic wearing words. Ethan rubbed both hands through his hair aggressively before muttering. We made mistakes. Mistakes. Such a clean little word for something filthy enough to poison 2 marriages at once. Victoria let out a bitter laugh under her breath. Mistakes are forgetting anniversaries, she said quietly. This was a sustained operation. Ethan flinched at the sentence like it physically hit him. Olivia stood abruptly from the table, wiping tears from her cheeks with trembling fingers. I was scared, she whispered toward me. I did not know how to tell you. I looked at her for a long moment before answering. You were scared after the medical results, I said calmly. Not before. That silence afterward felt enormous. Olivia's breathing hitched sharply. Somewhere in the kitchen, the dishwasher hummed softly beneath the tension like ordinary life refusing to stop for heartbreak. Ethan grabbed his coat from the chair suddenly. I am leaving, he muttered. Victoria stepped aside without even looking at him. That hurt him more than anger would have. Indifference is colder than rage. Before Ethan reached the hallway, I spoke again without raising my voice. Did you ever plan to tell me? He stopped walking but did not turn around. It got complicated, he answered quietly. Complicated. Another coward's word. Olivia began crying harder then. Real crying now. Shoulders shaking. Hands covering her face. But even sitting there watching my wife break apart emotionally, I felt strangely detached from it. Like the grief had already moved through me days earlier while I stared at prescription paperwork alone in my kitchen. Daniel, please, she whispered through tears. I never wanted to hurt you. I nodded slowly. And yet somehow you managed anyway. Victoria reached into her purse quietly and removed her wedding ring. She stared at it for one long second before placing it gently beside the untouched wine glasses on the dining table. No dramatic speech. No scene. Just a small circle of gold resting beneath chandelier light like evidence from a dead life. Olivia looked at the ring and completely broke down after that. "I swear it was over," she cried. "We were trying to end it." I almost laughed then. Affairs always become over right after discovery arrives. Right after consequences walk through the front door carrying paperwork. I stood slowly from my chair and looked directly at Olivia for the first time all night. "You know the worst part?" I asked quietly. Tears streamed down her face while she shook her head. "It is not even the affair anymore." My voice stayed level, controlled. "It is the fact you came home, looked me in the eyes, and risked my health while pretending to be my wife." Olivia covered her mouth instantly like the truth physically hurt to hear out loud. Outside, rainwater rolled down the dark windows while Seattle traffic moved somewhere beyond our neighborhood, completely unaware that 4 lives had just shattered around a dining room table. And standing there watching the woman I once trusted with every part of my future cry beside cold dinner plates and medical paperwork, I realized something brutal about betrayal. By the time the truth finally surfaces, the marriage is usually already dead. The paperwork just confirms the diagnosis. 3 months after that dinner, the house finally sounded different. Quiet used to feel uncomfortable there. Now it felt honest. Seattle winter had settled over the city fully by then. Bare trees. Gray mornings. Rain drifting sideways across empty streets while ferries moved slowly through cold water downtown. I rented a smaller place near Edmonds after the separation paperwork went through. 2 bedrooms. Hardwood floors. A coffee maker that sounded like an old truck every morning. Nothing fancy. But for the first time in a long time, the air inside my home felt clean. Olivia moved into an apartment across the city near Bellevue. We spoke only through attorneys now unless paperwork required signatures or account transfers. Funny how fast 14 years can shrink into emails and legal documents. In the beginning, she still tried reaching out. Long messages around midnight. Apologies. Regret. Paragraphs explaining loneliness and emotional distance and how things spiraled. That word again. Spiraled. As if affairs happen accidentally, like cars sliding on ice instead of hundreds of deliberate choices stacked one on top of another. I stopped responding after the second week. Some conversations no longer heal anything. They just reopen wounds trying to scar over. Ethan's life collapsed faster than mine did. Hospitals protect reputations carefully, especially for doctors. I heard through Victoria that Seattle Grace quietly placed him under internal review after personal matters started bleeding into professional concerns. He lost consulting contracts first. Then speaking invitations. Then his marriage. Affairs feel exciting in secrecy. They look much uglier under fluorescent conference room lights with administrators asking questions. Victoria filed for divorce within a month. Last I heard, she moved closer to her sister in Portland and started over there. We still text occasionally. Nothing inappropriate. Just 2 people who survived the same storm checking whether the other person made it to shore alive. The strange thing is, I do not even hate Olivia anymore. Hate requires energy. And eventually betrayal exhausts itself. What remained afterward was sadness more than anger. Sadness for the version of us that used to exist before ambition and secrecy and selfishness hollowed everything out from the inside. Some nights I still catch myself remembering old versions of her. Olivia dancing barefoot in our kitchen during our first year married. Olivia falling asleep against my shoulder during road trips. Olivia crying tears of pride the day my company finally expanded into commercial contracts. Those memories do not disappear just because newer ones arrive carrying damage. But memory changes shape after betrayal. Sweet moments become heavier because now you know how the story ends. One Friday evening near the end of February, I drove home after work while rain hammered the windshield hard enough to blur traffic lights into red smears across the highway. The truck smelled faintly like coffee and sawdust from a job site earlier that afternoon. I remember pulling into my driveway and noticing how peaceful the house looked through the rain. No tension waiting behind the front door. No hidden phones. No lies moving quietly room to room pretending to be marriage. Just silence. Honest silence. I sat in the truck for a minute listening to the engine tick softly while cold rain rolled down the glass. Then I reached into the center console and pulled out the last remaining copy of the medical paperwork. Creased edges now. Ink slightly faded from being folded too many times. For a long moment, I just stared at it beneath the dashboard light. The lab reports. The billing records. The pages that exposed everything nobody thought would surface. Then I stepped outside into the rain,